All right, everybody. Welcome to Talkin Ball Postgame Live with Pat Leonard from the New York Daily News, the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. Here on YouTube, the handle is PL on NFL everywhere on social media. P Leonard NYDN is my handle on X or Twitter. Coming to you here after another Giants loss, 8 straight losses, 29-21, the final score. Turns out the Giants are not about that life, as Mike Kafka said they needed to be coming out of that blowout loss to the New England Patriots going into the bye. Really interested in hearing your guys' questions because obviously at this point of the season, it's all lost as far as the record goes. And it's more conversation about Joe Shane's job, the coaching search, earning as high of a draft pick as possible while not overtly tanking. Obviously, the Giants are not good enough to need to tank, right? And we will talk about individual player performances. We'll talk about Abdul Carter finally showing up and having a game despite the result, what that could mean for their future. Thing I wanted to focus on at the moment to start off as your questions load into the chat. Thank you all for being patient. Was writing an extensive story for the New York Daily News on Jaxson Dart because Dart, the Giants quarterback, feels like he's being singled out right now. That there's a sensitivity to him because of the public discourse about his concussion and his frequent concussion evaluations and the leaks and the comments and the conversations that essentially now have put his name and made his name synonymous with the concussion issue in the NFL. Now, some of it is his doing as far as how he has run and conducted himself. Some of it is people in the organization leaking that they want him to run differently and putting it out into the national media that they want that to be a talking point as well. And part of it is what we saw today on the field, which was the NFL's / Giants management of these issues and concussions in games. Now, Jaxson Dart was perplexed, frustrated, surprised that he was removed from the field in the early fourth quarter of this game. He runs on a play that, they waffled about describing what exactly happened on the play call, but basically they had a pass play with a pitch option, a pass option, even a trick play pass option. But even Kafka, who said it wasn't a designed run, acknowledged that there was a run element of it. Like essentially, he said it's either him or nobody. Try to get back to the line of scrimmage on the run, which we've talked about. So it was definitely a play call that left the possibility and gave Jaxson Dart the freedom to use his legs if he wishes. So that's another wrinkle of this. If you're telling Jaxson Dart be safe as a runner, if you're calling plays that have run elements and encourage him to use his body to go get those yards himself, it's really difficult to play the game of, hey, Jaxson, we want you to use your body as a weapon, but only do it this way, not that way, right? Then again, there's a play earlier in the game where it's a 29-yard run. He's way downfield. He's got the first down. He's got them in the field goal range. And instead of sliding, he takes on 2 defenders trying to split the gap, trying to get to the end zone, takes a hit to try to make an extra play, something that you just don't need to do, right? But he also slides at another point. I bring these all up. I know it sounds like a lot of different plays and issues and questions and descriptions of how his play style all thrown at you at once. But this is the point, is right now I'm listening to Jaxson Dart standing at the podium after the game here at MetLife Stadium. I'm looking at the field with the red end zones right now, which I love, by the way. I love the red end zones, even though the Giants didn't hit it enough in this game. But these are all the issues and the questions and the topics swirling around in Jaxson Dart's head right now because he's trying to get a grasp on exactly what is expected of him. He said, I'm not really sure what the reason was I had to come out of the game. It was just really weird. I don't understand it. Kafka said the officials told Dart to leave the field, that he had to be evaluated. They made him leave to get tested. Dart was frustrated for a couple of reasons. One, that he didn't feel like it was that significant of a hit. And two, he felt like the timing of it was strange with them on 1st and goal. He has this run where he gets kind of squished and hit by Eddie Goldman and Javon Kinlaw together on the inside of the defensive line. He did have his neck and head bent back. And, I'm always somebody who's banging the table for the NFL, the NFLPA, the concussion spotters, the teams to be diligent about this. So prioritizing player safety is a great thing, a good thing. It's good to see. But I'm just saying Dart's frustration was, listen, you take me off the field for 2 plays while we're in the red zone on the goal line. It ends up being a turnover on downs when he comes back for 4th and they don't get it done. And also he just felt like there was nothing to check. There was no issue. When he was asked if he feels like he's being watched extra closely, Dart said, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't just see people getting taken out of the game like that. So I definitely feel like there's a sensitivity for some reason. He said he was surprised, especially it was a big thing that happened to game in that situation. And so he also, I asked him this question. This is something that came to mind for me is, although it's positive that they are prioritizing his health in this situation when he gets hit in the head, it is unusual when you think about what happened in Chicago on November 9th. He hits the ground. His head hits the ground. He's clearly lying motionless at a certain point, doesn't even reach out for his fumble, and then is allowed to go back into the game a while later for the next drive before then somebody notices here's something on the headsets and they pull him out and they diagnose him, they evaluate him, and he has a concussion and he misses the next 2 games, right? So you have to try to square that with this game where it's a much less severe, obvious, and any kind of issue that anybody really noticed on the play. And yet he's suddenly being pulled off the field and there's this much extra caution being applied. So I asked him, do you think this is a reaction to that? Like, is this an overcorrection potentially on the part of the NFL, knowing that it was mishandled in Chicago and now they're trying to be extra diligent and get it right? Dart said, I'm not sure for the reason. I think that'll be something that hopefully gets communicated. I'm not really sure, to be honest, why that happened. So in other words, he's saying to anyone who will listen, please get this message across to the NFL, to whoever it is that's listening. This can't be how I'm handled. I can't be handled differently than somebody else. And frankly, in my opinion, because I know the NFL is an optics driven league, I don't believe in coincidences. And it is interesting that the NFL and the Players Association, even though the NFL acknowledged they review all of those situations, there was no transparency coming out of the Chicago situation about what went wrong. Was anyone held accountable for it? Any changes made? There was no one who took responsibility and said, yep, we screwed that up. Right. And so from that, we go to this. Definitely feels like a little bit of an overcorrection, but that's just my opinion. That's my opinion based on covering the league since the start of 2016 and what I have seen. Now, that said, he said, I take accountability for the fact that he didn't play well enough. He said, I didn't play well enough for the team to win. I have to be better, especially in this situation. Didn't play good enough for their team today. They fell behind 13-0 early. He had 2 turnovers on downs, including at the end of the game. And, Andrew Thomas, the left tackle, just said, we sucked in the red zone. Basically that the offense was frustrated with that. And Dart acknowledged frustration on the part of a lot of players, and that they do talk about it. Some people get guys riled up, fired up. They try to be positive and galvanize the group and try to turn their frustrations into something, try to harness it for good. But, all of that said, they still come out of it really feeling like they're doing what it takes to lose games. They feel like it's not a secret that they are just not making plays as a team. And I'll get into more of what went wrong today. There's the special teams, problems on offense and defense. Giants fall to 5-18-1 in the NFC East since Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll took over. That's 208 winning percentage in division. And they now have a losing record against all 3. It was 0-7 against the Cowboys, 2-7 against the Eagles, and now it's 3-4-1 against Washington. So all of that obviously pathetic, frustrating, but we can spin some of it forward today, analyze what we watched as well. Reminder, if you purchase a super chat or super sticker, your comments or questions will be answered first right at the top of the queue. And we appreciate all of your support. Please also support our sponsors, MyBookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, and Sal Loretta for Men. I will throw up the codes soon for our sponsors so that you can go support them at mybookie.ag, hooksrub.com, boomchaga.com, and Salaretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey. We start with Maria, who purchases a super sticker. Thank you, Maria. $10. Thank you so much for supporting Talkin Ball. Maria says, would you say Dart performed better under Daboll? If so, what aspects of Daboll's system or coaching do you think brought that out? If they get the first-round draft pick, are they keeping Dart? Great questions, Maria. I do think they were getting more out of Dart pre-concussion. Certainly the New England game and the Washington game, Dart has not been as explosive of a player consistently. I do think, even though he did make some really nice plays and had, for example, that touchdown pass to Wan'Dale Robinson, underthrown, but kind of a nice play, a nice read, a nice ability to give him a chance and not give a defender the ability to make the play. The touchdown pass to Darius Slayton that Slayton dropped, a lot of plays that he did make. But what I see, Maria, is there was an over-reliance under Daboll on Jaxson Dart's legs, on running him, on calling designed runs, on not being afraid of using his body as a battering ram. And here's the thing you have to understand, and we've talked about this before, but it is a really interesting dilemma for Dart and the Giants, where his running and mobility and athleticism is a huge reason why he was drafted where he was and why he was so successful in college at Ole Miss, and why the Giants liked him, why Daboll liked him, and why he's made plays out of structure and helped this offense at times this season look more exciting than it's looked in a long time. But think about this, Maria. Under Brian Daboll, we have seen Tommy DeVito, Drew Lock, Daniel Jones, Tyrod Taylor, Jaxson Dart, I may be missing somebody, have some sort of flash of success in certain spurts, right? It obviously hasn't been good most of the time for any of those quarterbacks, given what the offense did under Daboll, but there have been spurts of effectiveness. DeVito is probably the number one example of where did this guy come from? Why is he serviceable all of a sudden out of nowhere? How good is he, right? All those questions. And I think the consistent element is putting a lot on the quarterback, giving them a lot of freedom to run and mobilize. And so you do get some out of structure plays, some explosiveness out of that. And you create more options for the defense to defend. So initially it feels like it tilts in your favor. But the consistent part of all of those quarterbacks under Daboll is that they all got hurt. They all got hurt running. They all got hurt trying to extend those plays. They all got hurt with the ball essentially put in their hands and said, do what you will with it, whether it's throw, whether it's run, whether it's we're running you 8 times, 10 times, 5 times, 6 times. We're going to use your legs. We're going to expose you throughout the game. And we're going to do it seeking explosives. And the trade-off at times is going to be your physical well-being, your body. But the problem is, yes, it's football, so that's going to happen. But that's only to an extent. It's not an excuse to say it's football, guys get hurt. Good offensive coordinators and good coaches can run an effective scheme that also tries to maximize the protection of their players. Think about what a pocket passer is too, Maria. The idea of having an effective pocket passer in the NFL, it's not arbitrary. The reason is because you want to create a situation for your quarterback to be comfortable to deliver the football to somebody and to be healthy enough after that play to take the next snap. And so what I've seen since Kafka has taken over and since the discourse has increased both internally and externally about Dart trying to be safe as a runner, and he has to be wise about that and smart and all that, what I've seen is an internal emphasis from the Giants with Kafka and Joe Schoen obviously pulling a lot of strings, an emphasis on trying to improve Dart's ability as a pocket passer and a limit to his running in favor of, let's see if we can have Jaxson create similarly consistent, explosive plays as a passer who runs instead of as a runner who throws. But that's obviously becomes a week-to-week issue because Jalen Hurts goes through in Philadelphia. Now, Jalen Hurts is a Super Bowl MVP, but there are plenty of times where, like today, even at times against the Raiders, when does he fully unleash himself and look like the player that people consider to be elite? It's when he finally gets out and uses his legs, and then also is making throws off of that. So can you survive like that in the NFL? Yes, but you have to pick your spots. You have to be smart and strategic. If you lean on it completely, Maria, I think what happens is Dable ends up trading off some loose, out of structure explosives eventually for the health of the quarterback and the health of the long term of the program. That's I hope that answers your question. If they get the first overall pick, are they keeping Dart? Maria, I think this is a valid question in this sense. I'm not sitting here reporting that they're looking for a new quarterback. But what I will say is, first of all, years ago when they had drafted Daniel Jones, and I think it was the next year Justin Herbert was coming out and Tua, I wrote a column that said, I know it's unorthodox and I know maybe you get fired very quickly for it, but if you really are scouting Justin Herbert and you think he's the best quarterback you've ever seen, even if you drafted Daniel Jones last year, take the quarterback. It's about hitting on a star quarterback. That's all that matters. And that's rare that happens, obviously, like Steve Keim drafting Josh Rosen and then Kyler Murray back-to-back first-round years. That doesn't usually happen. Usually a general manager doesn't have that kind of security. It's rare. And also, it's like I said, you're sticking your neck out on the line in a big way when you do that as an organization, as a GM. I do think, though, there's definitely an underratedly significant evaluation going on right now of Dart. Like, for sure, let's just hypothetically say, for Maria's argument's sake, the Giants lose out here, or they lose out except for a win over the Raiders, who might fire Pete Carroll tomorrow. And let's say that happens and you get to the end of the season, you have 2 or 3 wins, and Dart, essentially, despite the early promise, finishes the season not looking like he has a firm grasp on being a consistently effective pocket passer, still questions about his ability to stay healthy as a runner, still debates internally about how much to unleash him as a runner. Now you have a lot of questions, a lot of bubbles overhead that you have to gather together into some semblance of a strategy as an organization. And it's like, do we stand behind this player and we attribute his struggles to the construct around him, or do we keep our minds open to the evaluations of this draft, even if we don't fully intend to draft one? I think your job as a GM and an evaluator is always to keep all of your options open. Even if you have a quarterback, I think you should still scout all the QBs, look and see if one do you think is clearly better than what's in your building, or is there a chance that he is, and should we take that chance? But ultimately, it's important also on the flip side, on the side of stability and belief in Dart, where we have clear evidence, ample examples of the Giants letting players go and then they thrive somewhere else. And they had an inability to recognize that their lack of culture and process and success has a negative effect on these individuals, right? So these individuals are also part of the losing, but the Giants have dragged some of these individual players down. So let's say this season finishes poorly. Yes, on the one hand, you need to evaluate everything, but also, are you going to call Jaxson Dart a player who doesn't have it because he can't succeed with this version of the Giants? He can't succeed in this organization. That could also easily be argued as a rash call and a rash move and a rash decision because of how much uncertainty and instability and dysfunction is happening around and right in front of him. Null Void, what's up? $5. Thank you. Appreciate your support. Says, what more does ownership need to see to fire Schoen? All of his signings and draft picks today, especially Hyatt, who he traded up for, has been utter trash. No, I'll say this. Like, I feel as strong as ever today that he's going to get fired. I don't see any logic that you can put forth to make an argument for Joe Schoen staying. This team went winless in the division last year. They are 1-4 in division this year. And let's be honest, does anybody think they're beating the Dallas Cowboys in week 18 when Dallas may be still fighting for their playoff lives? So there's, it feels like there's not much to talk about with Joe Schoen. I saw Ian O'Connor, my colleague in the New York media, a revered reporter, author, and a good friend as well, and somebody that I think, just like I consider myself having my finger on the pulse consistently, Ian over The Athletic has his finger on the pulse of the Giants, especially in these types of critical moments. And he tweeted after this game, fire the head coach, fire the DC, fire Brian Cox, get Dart healthy, curse on Hard Knocks, recharge in the bye week, play a lousy opponent at home. Nothing works for the 2-12 Giants. Nothing. Joe Schoen has a non-program. I think that is an effective summation of where we are. And I do think it's going to be at the end of the season that Joe is evaluated. But I think he's finished. And this is just my opinion. I'm not reporting somebody told me today he's definitely getting fired. This is just the mounting evidence of what I see. Now, some people have said to me that during the coaching search, let's say they go out of the box and they hire a Marcus Freeman from college, or a Jeff Hafley, who was a former college head coach, Green Bay assistant, or let's say they make a splash hire, some kind of splash hire. Let's just use Freeman as an example from Notre Dame. There are some people who think that that's the type of hire Joe Schoen would like to make because it would benefit him the most, because it would be viewed as a ringing success to land that candidate for the organization. And if Joe Schoen got credit for helping make it happen and was offering some sort of assurance to the coach that he would also be involved in the process, you can see where the narrative shaping of that would come in, and it would become a, hey, look, this can succeed with Joe, and that implicit kind of finger pointing at what Dable wasn't able to do, So I think he's gone, but those are two sides of that there. D-Kit checks in with $10. Thank you, D-Kit. He says, Pat, the Jaxson Dart stuff has become silly. Enough already. Regardless, it has become painfully clear the Giants need to blow this entire thing up. Half measures will not work. We need a total reset. D-Kit, I agree. Yes, no, the Dart situation is ridiculous. And I think it's an important talking point today, not because, like I said, I think you guys have seen, I'm not somebody who's been crushing Jaxson Dart for how he runs. I do think I thought it was kind of nasty work how it got blown up and leaked about how this was a problem for him. And now suddenly his name is synonymous with unsafe runners who get a lot of concussions. It's going to be hard to shake. It's going to be hard for him to shake that now. And, as far as like being, it being attached to him being synonymous with that issue. But I think it's interesting from a standpoint, D-Kid, of here's the young man who's charged with trying to dig the Giants out of this malaise, out of this futility, out of this mess. And the way he knows how to do it is by playing his aggressive, explosive, confident style. And yet now he's being told, not only is he being told he's not doing it correctly or well enough, he is also now confused about what is even required of him because of how he's being pulled off the field and managed, how the plays are being called, where they're calling fewer design runs. So it's clear that they're trying to de-emphasize that part of his game, but they also acknowledge that that's the best part of his game. And like I was even, when I was talking to Andrew Thomas today, he did note about, like I was asking about the team's identity. I don't have the full quote in front of me, But when I was asking about the team's identity, one thing he said was, that he feels like they do have an explosive offense, especially with Jackson's running ability and mobility, along with, the passing game, their physicality in the run game, those kinds of things. And so even the players who are saying, look at this element and this dynamic element that Jackson is offering that helps our offense and turns it into something else. So that's part of the interesting thing is Dart's charged with trying to help them dig out of this, but also now there's all these questions floating around in his head of like, well, how do I do it? Because here's how I wanted to do it, but now they're telling me I can't. So now what do I do? Right. But it really just puts an emphasis on the evaluation of him as a passer is where it comes down to. But D-Kid, I totally agree with you on the blow it up part of it. I mean, their special teams is an absolute joke. Like you think about building a roster and clearly, we have 4 years of evidence here. Clearly, Joe Schoen and the Giants operation with him and Brian Dable and what they've run, they have no idea how to assemble a positive, like a consistent special teams unit. Michael Gabriel, the coordinator, in over his head right now. They're just getting demolished. I mean, 2 punt returns for a touchdowns, like 1 in each of the last 2 games to the Patriots and to Jalen Lane of the Commanders today. Cameron Johnson, the new punter, hit like a line drive running punt that outkicked the coverage today. And the guy was to the house before, like right when he caught the ball, you could see it. Younghoe Koo with 2 missed field goals. Mike Kafka with some questionable decision-making and reliance and settling for one of the field goals. And I mean, before the game, Koo was really struggling, especially on the one side of MetLife Stadium. And Kafka at the end of the one quarter ran the ball to set up a field goal, and then the clock ran out on the quarter. And at the start of the next quarter, they had flipped the field to the more difficult side of the field to kick, and Koo missed. So it was a bad kick from him, coming from a kicker who had turned into a meme the previous game because of what happened in New England, which is something basically no one has ever seen, where he didn't even attempt to kick one of the field goals. And now you have this situation on top of the punt returns for touchdowns. It's a colossal mess. Not to mention Gunnar Olszewski not cleared for concussion protocol. So even though they have Amir Smith-Marset and Xavier Gipson on the practice squad, they didn't elevate either. So then they end up with Javon Holland, their starting safety, returning punts, and, wasn't effective there in that role. Just a microcosm of why it needs to be blown up. Candyman, what's up? Candyman says, hey, Pat, my son and I are going to the game in Vegas. I'll never root for them to lose, but the pain stings less when I think about the draft. At least you should get some entertainment from Jackson in that game. And really, that's their best chance for a win at this point. I know the Vikings have been really sorry as a team this season, but Brian Flores' pressures and defense, I promise, will be something that Jaxson Dart is going to have at least ups and downs with. I'm not saying it's going to be a total disaster for Jackson and the Giants. I don't know that, but it is much different than what he has faced and other defenses he has faced so far. It will be a challenging game plan to prepare for. Of course, Mike Kafka has coached before against Flores and the Vikings in that blowout season opener loss here. A different Minnesota team, of course, with J.J. McCarthy at quarterback, and they've really struggled on offense. Kevin O'Connell really hasn't gotten it running and humming there with McCarthy in tow. So that's been a struggle. But the fact of the matter is that Vegas game that you're going to is the best chance to see a Giants win the rest of the season. So I hope you enjoy it regardless. I do know the stadium is a cool stadium to see. Been in there, saw a Super Bowl there as well as a Giants game. And the whole atmosphere is great. You can walk to the stadium from some of the casinos. The strip is right there. It's a fantastic trip. It's a fantastic fan trip. In fact, I was planning on this season trying to organize a friends trip along with my business trip to cover the game, to be out there, people at the stadium, dinner the night before, hit the tables, have dinner after the game, all of that. But it falls on just a tough time, like right after Christmas. You got kids. It's really expensive as well. So kudos to you, Candyman, for taking your son out to Vegas for that game. I'm actually not going to be at the Vegas game. My plan, though, is to definitely do some version of Talkin Ball post-game live, or I don't know what I'm going to have going on the day of the game. I don't even know exactly what it's going to look like. But if I am free the day of the Giants-Raiders game, I'm thinking about doing a live watch-along with all of you here on Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard on YouTube. So I think that's probably something that would interest you guys. D-Kid says, you lost me, my man. Trading this quarterback or arguing that is a fair question whether we should move on from this QB is total nonsense. Sorry, anyone with eyes can see this kid has it. Pisses me off. Oh, no, D-Kid, I'm not saying I would move on from Jaxson. I'm just saying there is, when this happens, like when everything goes in the tank and a season ends, let's say with 2 or 3 wins, I was asked a question about that, and I was painting the hypothetical of, let's say they finish with 2 or 3 wins and Jaxson doesn't figure it out the rest of the way. You have to remember, D-Kit, I'm not saying I think they should replace Jaxson. It's not what I'm saying. But think about it. If Joe Schoen's trying to turn over a new leaf and create a new narrative and get a new lease on life and reset his clock, right? Or if there's a new general manager and a new coach and they're not married to Dart. These are just things that in the NFL, in the real world, happen sometimes, right? I'm not saying that's what they should do. I'm not endorsing draft over Jaxson Dart, write him off, he's not the guy. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that in the real world, the politics of it, along with the results, sometimes create these types of situations where the general manager, because of self-serving reasons, as well as a new GM and coach who aren't married to that quarterback, like those are things that happen where you draft again. You know, those things happen. But certainly Jaxson Dart has shown a lot of promise. But D-Kid, this is why this running issue and him being connected to all of this consistently and his name being involved in like every conversation about safety and concussions, you know, it's really it's not a good thing for him to be tied to them like that, for him to be tied to that topic like this and unable to shake it. Thanks, DK. You're always awesome, supporting, contributing, and pushing back when it's warranted as well. Reminder to all of you who are here to support our sponsors. So my bookie, the code is Leonard. That's where you're going to place all of your sports bets, tailing Pat's picks every week, and all of my picks against the spread, which you can find on social media every Sunday morning. I believe my best bet this week was the Eagles covering against the Raiders, and how absolutely crushed the Raiders. Like I said, Pete Carroll definitely going to get fired this year, but just wondering if it's going to happen Monday after that total no-show. We will see. But my bookie is the place to tail all those picks. You get I think it's a bet boost with the code Leonard when you sign in as a first-time depositor, and go to mybookie.ag, use that code. You can play anywhere too. If you live in a state that doesn't allow certain sports books to operate, you can play there on MyBookie, as well as a great casino. A lot of offerings at MyBookie. Go check it out. Hooks, rubs, and spices, of course. Big, bold Texas barbecue flavor, allergen-free, very, very conscious of people with all different allergies. It's a terrific product. A lot of variety to Hooks, rubs, and spices. So when you tailgate for these Giants games, like if you were one of those absolute diehard fans who were in the parking lot for this game, given the crappy weather and all the snow, Hooks, rubs, and spices, he's got a flavor for every meat, every preference, whatever it is you like. There's the Mad Cow, there's the Smoke and Sweetness, so many different rubs, seafood, different meats, chicken, steak, brisket, and also our good friend Jared has great gear over at hooksrub.com. So go check it out. And the code at hooksrub.com is Talkin Ball. So it's Talkin Ball is the code there. You'll get a big time discount over at hooksrub.com. And Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink. You guys know Boom Chaga, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants, and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour Boom Chaga, this natural supplement, into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally feel a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today. Use that code TalkinBall25 on the subscribe and save option, and you'll get 25% off your first order. And you can just cancel out on subscribe and save after you do it. It's just a way to get the discount and to log that you are a Talkin' Baller supporting the show and the team here. All right. And last but not least, Salaretta for Men in Midland Park, New Jersey. Salaretta for Men is the best place for luxury menswear and tailoring. And whether you're going to a wedding, whether you're doing arrivals for Giants and NFL games like I do, walking in every Sunday morning or Monday night or Thursday night for a Giants game, keep me looking fresh on game days, including at Super Bowl Radio Row, where we bring Talkin' Ball now. Headed there for our second year this coming February in Santa Clara and San Francisco. Salaretta is the place to go. Go to Salaretta in Bergen County, Midland Park. Tell them that Pat Leonard sent you from the New York Daily News and from Talkin' Ball Live here on the YouTube channel, PL and NFL. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Be a subscriber on Talkin' Ball. Hit those like buttons while we are live, and give us some reviews on the channel. Always helps. And tell your friends. Tell your Giants fan friends. Tell your NFL fan friends. Have dialed back some of the guest podcasts in recent weeks. That'll be coming back in full force, probably in the off season, if not in some of these late season, regular season games and weeks. A lot going on, but we're going to have, a lot more coming on the podcast, on the show, including we have Talkin' Ball merch. There's a link to my merch Shopify store on the YouTube channel. Go purchase that. There should also be some products popping up during our live Talkin' Ball here on YouTube on your screen, and you can purchase some of the hoodies. They also have, we also have a Talkin' Ball winter hat. That's awesome. Like a beanie, as well as glasses, t-shirts, baseball caps. And so anything you do, support the show. Really appreciate you guys always. Peter Randazzo says, Pat, if they $20 from Peter, thank you. Peter says, Pat, if they hire a coach and keep Schoen, if it blows up again next year, we win 4 games. Sure, the new coach gets a pass, but now Schoen gets fired. What happens if the new GM doesn't want that coach? Make this make sense. Peter, that is the age-old question. It's a very delicate and dicey thing to do what you just articulated, right? So you had the Jerry Reese with Coughlin. You fire Coughlin and retain Reese. Reese and Ben McAdoo doesn't work. They both get fired. You hire Dave Gettleman with Pat Shurmur. That goes in the tank. You only fire Shurmur. Then you make Joe Judge inherit Dave Gettleman as GM rather than trying to hire people who were a collaborative pairing. Dave Gettleman drags Joe Judge down. That doesn't work. They're oil and water. The Giants were supposed to let basically have Dave walk out after the first year and step out and have a new GM come in. They didn't. That all goes in the tank in year 2, and they get fired. So now you come up again. You hire Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll together. Similarly, a duo hired together like you did with Dave Gettleman, Pat Shurmur. And now, so far, you've only fired the head coach. Are you going to make that same mistake again of keeping the GM, assuring yourself that it's not the GM's fault, that it's just the coach, that the personnel is better, that because ownership is involved? This is the concern, right? Why does this happen? The concern is that it happens because the ownership is partially and significantly involved in the personnel process. The GM is in ownership's ear, et cetera, et cetera. So that can create a problem. The Chicago Bears, even though they've had some success this season, are an organization that has done this and screwed it up with this same issue. It's always firing one and keeping the other and never having people on aligned timelines at the GM and coach position. and you end up jockeying it back and forth, and the politics of the organization get in the way, and you never have full alignment all the way from the top down, threaded through the GM, coaching staff, and down into the locker room. And so these are issues that not just the Giants organization has dealt with or created, but it's difficult to overcome. And the Shane Daboll hire was an effort from management or from ownership, Giants ownership, to go outside the family and create some collaborative alignment. So they did make that effort, and they had made that effort when they hired them, more so than in other years, to step back, very conscious of the meddling accusations. But, that obviously, even though the intentions were right there, if you don't hire people who are good at the jobs, then the intentions ultimately don't matter, and you have to go back to the drawing board. And so that's where they find themselves now. And like I said, I don't think there's an argument for retaining Shane. Collusion says, not much to say or ask other than fire Joe Shane, just supporting the stream a bit. Thank you, Collusion. I appreciate that. Reiterating what we all know needs to happen. D-Kid says, did you see whether John Mara was at the game? D-Kid, I did not see John Mara. I did see that Roger Goodell was here. I did not see John with my own eyes, but I saw Roger Goodell was here. And also, I believe Steve Tisch was spotted on the sideline. All right, let's get into the queue. Thank you for all those super chats. If you have more, drop them in the chat, and I will get to them. Going to have to end this chat at, let me see. Going to have to end this chat in about 10 minutes because I have to jump and head back to my house to then get picked up and go into the city to do NBC New York Sports Final with John Chandler, who is filling in tonight for Bruce Beck. And so you can find Talkin Ball, you can find me on NBC New York later tonight after Sunday Night Football as well. And we will also be doing another Talkin Ball live early in the week. Goldie says, I can't believe we lost like that. John says, I don't care how good a leader in the locker room Slayton is. He kills this team every time with drops and is not fighting for the ball. I would cut him now and eat the dead cap. Addition by subtraction. Again, intentions. Joe Shane finally recognizing, man, I should probably pay some of these guys who are considered locker room leaders and glue guys who also can play. But he ends up paying and committing to a player in Slayton who, in that group of players we were just talking about, has some real shortcomings, and the drops are just too much. Like today, dropping the slant, dropping the touchdown, just no excuse. Into says, do you think they have remorse for not making a run at Vrabel? I definitely think they recognize, based on firing Daboll before the season even ends, that they made a mistake not firing him at the end of last season. But I also believe that I don't think Vrabel would have taken this job. I think he still would have taken the Patriots job. That was the job for him. There are a lot of Shane picks that need to be cut next year by the new coaching staff, by the way, says John. Yep. Some more super chats in the queue. Keith Wilson, thanks, Keith, says, the building is cancerous, a new coach, but he is going to be up against it. The Mara Mayhem as well as the league. It feels hopeless. Anywho, go Canes. Is that a Miami fan? Ouch. Rubbing it in the Irish here. But thank you for the super chat. And all is fair in trash talk in football. Let's see. Commanders tried to give us this game. The team is awfully coached, says John. Yeah, Commanders were dropping like flies. Players are getting hurt so frequently for Washington today, and it just didn't even matter. Let's see. Here's a stat. The Washington Commanders have swept the New York Giants in consecutive seasons for the first time since 1982-83. Oh, boy. How was the rest of the play, Mrs. Lincoln? That's where the Giants are. John says, for example, on the bad coaching, declining the penalty that would have made it 2nd and 30, putting Washington out of field goal range, and then going soft with only a 4-man rush. The DC didn't believe in the team, and it showed. Don't get me started on special teams. He says it's too late to fire guys. I don't know, John. They're basically averaging a firing a week here, right? Dumpster fire, rooting for the number 1 pick. John thinks nothing happens until John Mara's replacement gets put in place as far as Schoen. James says, I've seen enough of Dart to realize that he is not the future of the Giants. He is too fragile of a player, spends half the time in the blue tent, has folded in crunch time several times. James, interesting opinion. D-Kit, good example here of the fact that there are concerns and questions from different segments of the fan base and just people watching this about Jaxson. And like I said, even if you think it's valid or not, this is now a consistent topic brought up about Jaxson. It's like, hey, can we even count on him being healthy? Like I said, fair or not, it's something that continues to come up. Jared from Hooks Rub says, hey, Pat and Chat, didn't get to watch the game, but I see the result. Love my G-Man, but it's a terrible season. Thanks for the support. Love you all. Let's see. Barb says, I've never seen a team with such bad special teams. Can't even find a field goal kicker. Clean house. They all have to go. Jacob reminds everybody, smack that like and sub button for the best reporter on YouTube. John says, little Jordan Humphrey caught a touchdown pass for the Broncos today against Green Bay. Dan, totally agree with this. If this game doesn't seal Joe Schoen's fate, I don't know what will. Manzo says, 4 years and no kicker. Is this real? How can Schoen possibly keep his job? Fire him tonight so we can hire a real GM. Great job as always, Pat. Totally agree, Manzo. Doesn't know what he's doing. Hooks says, use Pat's code Talkin Ball for 20% off your order to help support the show. That's hooksrub.com. Dan says, hey, at least Abdul Carter looked motivated today. Only took 14 weeks. Dan says, this team is completely checked out. Anybody who has not seen it, watch the Kafka speech to the team on Hard Knocks. Look at the players' reactions. Tells you all you need to see. 2 things that bothered me today. I obviously was on all these sides of the ball that problems happened. One was Jermaine Illuminor had a 3-play stretch of a quarterback hit allowed, a quarterback sack allowed, and then a false start, unacceptable. And Paulson Adebo's tackling effort on the Terry McLaurin touchdown. I mean, what are we doing? Joe must go. You can always tell who's ready to play watching special teams. Yep. Pat, George said, I was late because Kafka didn't understand the question. I'm about that life, George. I'm about that life. Giants quarterbacks have thrown 7 interceptions when targeting Jalen Hyatt in his career. Wow. That's 9.6% of his targets, the highest rate of any wide receiver with 30-plus targets since 2022. John, where did you get that stat? Did you look that up yourself? That's good work. The only thing Kafka needs to understand is that he won't be here beyond the season along with everyone else on the staff, says Dan. Francis says, I'm not ever buying any official New York Giants anything until Schoen gets canned. Manzo wants John Dorsey. Kafka already has his next job secured as OC for Michigan State, says Mike Lowe. Good for Kafka. Hopefully he finds success somewhere else, says Francis. Bring back a Xerox of George Martin. Oh, George Young. Right, George Young. Barb doesn't think Dart likes Kafka. I just don't think he likes being micromanaged on how he can play. This is the NFL. Every game is close for the most part. GM Joey will tell us it's a close game, 1-score game, and the talent is strong. NY Sports Baby says, just got home from that shit show. Time for the Irish coffee. Irish coffee, good choice. Collusion, you took the words right out of my mouth here. Respect for even going to the game. I've been to some games late in the season when it doesn't matter, and they're rarely enjoyable. FYI, my colleague at NJ.com, Daryl Slater, today bought a ticket and sat in like the last row of the last section and talked to some fans up there to find out, who are the people who are still coming to these games and to tell the story of the fans. Thought it was a great idea, and I think sometime tomorrow morning on NJ.com it'll be up there. I know that's somebody else's work, but Daryl does good work, and I think it'll be an enjoyable read and, in a lot of different ways. Dan says, you're a better man than me. I wound up donating my tickets to LPG so he could donate them to someone else. Do you think Shane still has his job because he's best buds with Tim McDonald? They do vacation together and other things together per Shane himself. Tim has to be the reason he's still GM. I'm not going to sit here and pin it all on Tim and do that, but I will say Tim is a big believer in Joe. I know that. That's what I could tell you. You know, he was influential in his hiring. All right. NY Sports said, I'm in section 101. Let's see. Always looking to see if I can see you from my seats in the press box. You have to try to like DM me on Instagram one game or something and see if I can see it in time and look around and give you a wave. I do think it seals Shane's fate. Joe Shane hires punters who can't punt and tackle and coverage and kickers that are more famous for divots, says Simeon. Hey, Pat, Kafka is doing a great job of getting Shane fired. Can't think of anything else positive to say, says A2. Let's see. Barb says the O-line isn't good enough still. I agree. Peter reminds everyone to hit the like button. Thank you, guys. You guys are crushing the chat tonight. Kevin says Marcus Freeman is not an option. The Giants aren't paying his $50 million buyout. I can't see Freeman leaving ND for the NFL and taking a pay cut from his current $9.5 million. Mara is spending he would be spending $100 million for a coach. Overall management of this team. Overall management of this team by the front office and coaching staff is just awful, says Sublight. This organization is an absolute train wreck. Let's see. Collusion agrees the live watch-along of the Giants game during Vegas, if I'm at home, would be awesome. Looking forward to that. Hirsch agrees with Francis that you have to consider Mendoza if you're in that position. Vince says no one wants to get rid of Jaxson. Imagine him and a healthy Malik. NY Sports says the Vegas trip is a blast. Matt says same story as last year with the Daily News not covering the trips late in the season. Yes, Matt, part of it's budgetary, but to be honest, you know, I have a family with some young kids, and for me, if I have the option from my employer to miss a game like that in order to not miss meaningful time during Christmas with my family, I'm going to take it. And I hate not being at any game, but you know, it's not going to be every year that I can do these things with family. And so have to try to remember what's important during those times. So frankly, even though I always want to be at games and I hate missing, this is one of those ones where I felt like I didn't want to miss things either. And it lined up with the paper also saying, hey, what's one trip this season we can pick out that we won't do, you know? And I didn't want to miss Chicago, Denver, like some of these other road trips at, you know, Dallas in the early season when they're still relevant. All right, let's see. Any more super chats in the queue? All right, no more super chats. I'm going to roll in a minute or two here. Torn ACL from Mahomes. Oh, that's a shame. Tiger Metal Stack reminds everybody to subscribe. Thank you, Tiger. Let's see. Tree Squirrel says, I still understand the question. What do I think about Marcus Freeman, Josh? I think he deserves to be a candidate. I am interested, though, in how realistic it is that he would actually leave Notre Dame at this juncture. And as one of our previous commenters pointed out, there's a lot of financial commitment that has to go into that to get him here. Hook says, thanks for the shout out, Pat. At this point, they can tailgate, but a lot of those people are home gating right now. There's no doubt about it. Giants beat reporters can next season simply cut and paste this season's game. Right up, says Francis. Milan Fan Club says, I'm here, Pat. I had us winning today and possibly only losing to the Cowboys these last 4 games, but hey, it's this version of the Giants. Feels very hopeless, says Francis. Horrible watching this bright, beautiful, driven, competitive kid just completely dragged down by his soul with this awful organization. Sublight, I think you put it very, very well there on to D. Kitt's point on the evaluation of Jaxson. It's like, how much of it can you put on the kid when we know that players get dragged down by being here? I think that's a really good point. McKinney's out there balling right now, says Collusion. Holland has been so disappointing, not to mention Newbin isn't good either. Let's see. I still understand the question. Shane needs to go tomorrow, if not tonight, says Big Dog Max. Stevie Key says, keep up the great work, Pat. No BS in this chat. Thank you, Stevie. And that's going to do it for Talkin Ball Postgame Live tonight. But listen, guys, we didn't really get too much into the coaching search tonight. So let's do a coaching search episode sometime this week. I will advertise that on all my social media channels. Please subscribe if you don't already to the channel here, as well as to all my social media. P Leonard NYDN on Twitter or X. And then it's PL on NFL everywhere else. There's Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard on Facebook if you're on Facebook. And, of course, look for my updates throughout the week on nydailynews.com, as well as here on YouTube and on Instagram. Everywhere you are, go check us out. Stay locked in. And I promise that we'll have at least one Talkin Ball live this week, where we will discuss the coaching search, talk more about the candidates, and get more into unpacking this game and looking ahead to Vikings, Raiders, Cowboys, Joe Schoen's future. I think the best thing to say about this game and where we go from here is I agree wholeheartedly with the fact that there's nothing left to say about Joe Schoen. This game should seal his fate. This season should seal his fate. The Giants as an organization, when they sit down at the end of the season, if it takes them that long, need to look in the mirror and understand that if you have any semblance of standards when it comes to being an organization that wants to get back on track and have a winning and proud tradition, that you need to get rid of him. You need to clean house. Oh, Micah Parsons hurt as well. Sad to see. But that's the only thing that's acceptable. Anything less, unacceptable from the Giants. Tree Squirrel agrees. Joe got to go. Vince says, thank you. Keep not letting Shane off the hook. Thanks, buddy, says Bronx Boy. And Hook says, have a great one, Pat and chat. Reminder, support our sponsors, MyBookie, Hooks, Rubs, and Spices, Boom Chaga, and Salaretta for Men. The codes are down there below. Leonard on MyBookie, Talkin Ball 25 for Boom Chaga, and Talkin Ball for Hooks, Rubs, and Spices. And as I said, the Talkin Ball Shopify page, go get our merch on Shopify. The link is on my YouTube channel. Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard merch, beanies, sweatshirts, T-shirts, baseball hats, a beer mug, like a pint glass, good Christmas presents, and continue to support the show. Thank you so much for all of our super chatters who chipped in today. We got Maria, Null Void, D-Kit, Candyman, D-Kit again, Peter Randazzo, Collusion, D-Kit again, looking for the MVP award, Into, and Keith Wilson, and great chats, comments from all of you. If you missed us live, of course, this is going to live, this video, on the YouTube channel. You can go back and watch the entire thing. Check in there. You can comment on the video, on the page, on the YouTube page in general. I'll see those comments as well. And take care and look for my social media posts and pushes for our next Talkin Ball live chat coming soon this week. Thank you, everybody. Sorry that the Giants dropped another one, 8 in a row, 2-12 on the year with 3 to go. But my 3-14 predictions still in play. And before I jump out, looks like I got to address Larry, who checks in with $20 super chat. And he says, Pat, what the heck is the plan for the rest of the year? They seem like they are just going through the motions and don't care about the results. Is the entire team checked out? I think it's a combination of guys just playing for individual gain at one right now, which, you know, that's something that happens. Like if you had an incentive in your contract with 3 weeks to play, you would try to get it, and trying to get it also would put you in line to hopefully make plays for your team to win. But yeah, no, I see some frustration and players in the locker room who are disgusted. I also see some odd smiles or disinterest or detachment in the locker room as well. I don't mean smiles that they lost, but just guys who are not invested enough, or it doesn't hurt them enough. And it's part of the problem with the lack of culture with the team. Larry, what's the plan? I mean, obviously the wheels are off already. I mean, I don't think you clearly understand, but people might not fully understand how bad of a loss this actually is. With the Commanders losing 8 in a row, completely hopeless, bad defense, 31-0 shutout loss on the road in Minnesota last week. I mean, this is Dan Quinn in the NFC title game last year, seeming like he's on the ropes coming into this game. Never fear, the Giants are here. But yeah, Larry, the plan is they're trying to keep it together, but clearly Kafka in over his head. Charlie Bullen, the interim DC, in over his head. The special teams coordinator, Michael Gabriel, in over his head. The whole staff. Joe Schoen, not able to do it. Their roster is crumbling before our eyes. As bad as it was, it's getting worse. And the plan is to try to get to the finish line. And certainly Joe Schoen is effective at and practiced at trying to push narratives down the stretch to make him and the program look and sound better. And he has plenty of friends in the national media who try to make that happen. But the truth is, if you're a true Giants fan and somebody who wants this program to turn around, you know that the answer is not to sugarcoat and dress up the truth with false narratives that serve certain people's agendas. The way to make something positive happen and to create progress is to create the change that is necessary. And that is it. That is what you need to do. You need to fire Joe Schoen. You need to get this right. You need to make the right hires in the process, which is what ownership, I believe, intends to do when the season comes to an end. Larry, thanks for closing us out on that lucrative $20 note. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for supporting Talkin Ball Live. See you guys next time on the show. Love this community. Love all of you who are diehards, first-timers, whatever it is. Really grateful to you all for supporting me. Thank you so much. Take care.